It's Tansley Stearns.
Let's say I've been in, friend.
Oh, lots of good stuff. How's everything on your end?
Great. Couldn't be better. And lots of talk around here about how much information there is in the world. I think it's so interesting. I was talking to Mackenzie about the fact that there was a time when you had to sit with not knowing something, and that is fundamentally untrue for the most part now,
It really is.
which is weird.
It is weird.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's really weird. And I remember, I don't think it was you and I, but I had a whole conversation about encyclopedias
Oh,
not
yes,
too
we
long
did talk
ago.
about that. Yes.
Yes.
I love a good
I've
encyclopedia.
had multiples now because I was definitely some other people too. And it's just, yeah, you're right. There's something about the waiting. Oh my gosh, there's even a song by one of my favorite bands, the Arcade Fire, and I think like the line is like we used to wait.
Yeah.
And it's like we used to like, you'd send a letter or whatever. It's cool. So now we don't have to wait.
No, no. How do you approach the idea of information overload in a time where you can have every answer? You also only have so much capacity. How do you decide what to take in and what to stop taking in?
Um, yeah, I think you have to think about the problem that you're trying to solve
Mhm.
and being more disciplined than ever about that. Like,
Mm,
what are we really trying to do right now?
yeah.
Um, and is what we're reading or what we're discussing in service to solving or coming up with a solution to that problem?
Yeah.
Um, and then really being and this is something we talked about that I'm implementing now around this idea of kind of councils, and it's kind of a mix of how we're thinking about strategy, but like being really disciplined about the overall kind of themes of problems that we're solving for, aligning those to the value that we can give and to the organization.
Mhm.
And so I just think it's today's worker needs more discipline around connecting back to the strategy of the organization and the problems that the organization is trying to solve in
Mhm.
the community, or the problem that their department solves for the company, or the problem that their own role solves. Like I don't know. I
Mhm.
just keep thinking about problem as like the unlock for this
Yeah.
problem, too much information.
I think that's true. I also think it's discernment. I've been talking a lot about discernment recently because I do think it's a distinguishing feature of successful leaders and those that struggle. You know, how you're able to look at a situation and apply what is appropriate and take out what is less appropriate and understand timing. And I think discernment is a big part of it too.
So, but how do you coach on discernment?
Mm. So I do think this is one of the ways that remote work has hurt us. I
Hmm.
believe I learned a lot about discernment from being in proximity to people and being someone who was studying leaders around me and watching their discernment, as well as reading the body language of those around me when I was not so discerning. Which helped
Lots to
me to
learn.
know not to do such a thing again. And so I do think discernment is harder without proximity. I do think it's something that you take with you and I also think that when we talk about information overload, you can apply discernment to yourself in terms of connecting it directly to the problem to solve, as you were mentioning. You know, what am I going to parse out of this knowing that the problem I'm trying to solve is X?
And just being really selective about that.
Yeah, that's right. You know, it's the distinction between on pizza night and Sundays in my house. You know, the problem I am solving is I very much want to spend time with people that I care about. And I hope that when I am no longer around, the people that I care about will talk about Sundays and what it meant to be with other people that they cared about. the problem that some of the people in my life are solving on Sundays is is the perfect pizza that is very different from what is a perfect pizza for me. And so then I get some coaching about what they would like pizza to be like, which causes my Sunday purpose to be slightly less fulfilled.
This is our most meta episode,
Yes.
people. Just I hope you're hanging in there.
Discernment to pizza to
Yes.
overload.
And I
Yes.
haven't smoked any weed today.
What?
I just want to say, like, we're
Congratulations.
not down that rabbit hole.
You do live in Colorado.
I do.
Yes.
Isn't it legal in Michigan too, probably, or not?
That is
Yes.
also true. That is
Yeah.
also true.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if we're gonna go meta, might be something people choose to do. So,
I am all about choice for human beings.
yeah.
Yes.
And make good ones while you're working, people. Okay? HR guy has
Yes.
just yeah,
Do
okay.
your
We
darndest to
got
make
it.
good choices.
I never know.
No. Okay. So
Hey, where were
if you
we?
were here's what's interesting to be less meta. If I were starting as a young professional, I think it would be tempting to always be surrounded by more information. I wonder how we think about being discerning with information when so much of it is available and you feel like you have a lot of questions. When do you go deep and when do you stay shallow?
Yeah, yeah. When do you stop and say this is good enough and I can actually like, drive forward? I think it has to be again rigor around not just the problem, but like, hey, am I moving things forward and adding value with the work that I'm doing? Because there are many jobs, and I think you and I have them where you can just spend entire days, weeks, months, whatever, going down rabbit holes, but you got to bring yourself back out of that and hit back to your priority list and make sure that you're adding value. And I think at all steps in our career, like there's just I think jobs, let's use the job that's entry level at our organization, which is a consultant. Like I don't think very many of our consultants wonder how they're adding value. They're standing in front of a member and they're really adding value in that moment.
Yeah.
And then as we kind of move up and maybe we're removed from a member, or you're working on big projects or you're doing research before a project starts, I think that's when we can fall into that information overload trap.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, okay, well, I've got to go back and let's reverse engineer the timeline. When is this thing got to get done? And I've got to I have to cut myself off, and I need to start adding value here. For me, that's how I go through that exercise of like, all right, it's been fun, it's been real. I've been down this rabbit hole for long enough. I need to make a decision and be okay with it.
Yeah.
I think that's part of this conversation too, is just saying like, hey, and I've got a phenomenal coworker, actually a lot of phenomenal coworkers, but I have one in particular that we've got some complicated things here in Colorado related to leave, and we spent a lot of time researching and having conversations. And at a certain point, we both have to cut ourselves off and just say, we're going to make this decision and know that we did our due diligence and there isn't a lot of clarity around, this particular area. And so let's just be good with it and we'll learn if it was a mistake or maybe we won't and we'll just continue to move forward. So I
Yeah.
think action can be a solution to information overload too.
Yeah. Well, action is also an antidote to anxiety, and I think
Yep.
information overload can cause anxiety. So I do think having a deadline for action is really important if that's something that is a hurdle.
Action is an antidote to anxiety.
Hmm.
Tansy Stearns. I think that's phenomenal advice. It really is.
It
That's
is.
great. That
It
is
is.
so good because like, yeah, I can relate to that. And even if that action is walking around the block, like some type of movement, but moving forward with a project or whatever that looks like, I think that's great.
Yes. I really think one of the challenges of information overload is feeling as though you can't do anything. And so
Mm.
I think sometimes it's helpful to create what you're talking about, which are systems by which there are trigger moments that have to happen, right? At this point, at 5:05 on April 24th, we're going to do X.
Yep.
Whatever we have at that point is going to have to be good enough.
And being okay with that.
Yeah, that's right. I think my challenge right now is wanting to ensure that I can trust the information. This is not
Absolutely.
surprising for those who know me well because a low trust. And it's scary when you have systems that provide information that seems very factual that you
Mhm.
have to then go check and make sure that you aren't getting slop.
Yep.
That is really frightening to me. And it scares me, I think, in a time where we haven't put many boundaries around that, because I think
Yep.
if you were living in a time where it was coming that quickly, I'm not sure that we've set up all the protocols that we can to stop bad data from being moved forward as real.
Yeah, I just had a conversation this morning where somebody was using clearly, and they were upfront about it, but they were using an AI engine and it was just slop. And it really was consequential. And it was like, well, this isn't going to work. Like,
Mm-mm,
can't
mm,
do that.
mm.
So yeah, it is fascinating.
Yeah. How do you think about parsing the right information as you build learning systems as a leader in human potential? How are you thinking about shaping that today?
Yeah, I think team orientation matters a lot here. And by that, I mean, I just have really smart people on our team who
Yeah.
can, who are skeptical and
Hmm.
are encouraged to speak up and kind of rumble a little bit when we see things that aren't accurate. Um, I think that that type of discipline comes with education. And I
Sure.
think education is still super valuable.
Yeah.
And I think I've talked about it here. I feel like there was a season a couple of years ago. I was like, a secondary are colleges going to go away? Like, I don't think they will at all. In fact, I think there's an increased need for people to learn how to critically think. And I think we've talked about that here more than once. And I think I think that is one of the key tools to discerning, this discernment topic is like really the human brain thinking through these bits of information we're seeing and calling BS when we see BS. Um, and then being able to apply, that those kind of critical thinking skills to research and just staying hyper vigilant about like this is what I'm gonna look at. I'm going all the way down the data now. Like I'm gonna go in and really review this thing before I accept whatever it is this AI engine just said. Did
The
that
other,
answer that? That was a long
yeah,
answer.
no, I agree. And the thing I've been processing is not only do I think that higher education will remain important, I think a focus of higher education will be the humanities, in a time where
Mhm.
machines are so important and have become so central, how we engage with other human beings and some of the arts that make, I believe, humanity exceptional, I think become core to our existence, and how we build that into our lives, I think is going to be critical.
Yeah, I think that people, and I've probably been one of those in the far past, especially when I worked in software engineering, like kind of dismissive of the humanities degrees and some of those, but um, that is a mistake. I think there's so much to be learned in those areas, and in fact, I'm probably more eager to talk to somebody, when I'm hiring for a job that has had a lot of exposure to arts and um, you know languages and really stepping out of what is right in front of us from a like an engineering and math perspective to thinking a lot differently about the way the world works.
Hmm. Okay, so what advice would you give to our viewers and listeners about beginning a new job, having a lot of questions, and knowing how to parse all the information that they're given both at work and then what they might dive into externally?
I think it's again considering what impact you can have
Hmm.
and having a you know open discussion with your boss about that impact on a regular basis. Hopefully they have that structure, but if they don't, insist on it.
Hmm.
Here's what I did last week. Here's what I'm looking to do. I want to make sure that I'm, working in that right place. Because again, it's about what you said around being really action oriented, which I know is a little bit of a cliche, but now I feel like with this information overload topic, it's more important than ever to have that focus,
Hmm.
and talk about work or think about work in terms of the problems you're solving.
Yes. It's interesting that this topic seems to float around a lot of the fundamentals of innovation too, because one of the things that I always thought was interesting about the folks at IDEO who really understood innovation in a way that many didn't for years was that there had to be a bias to action. And the way that their leaders used to talk about it was there had to be a moment where the adults came in the room and said, okay, we've thought about this and we've played with this and we've done all that we can to think about the many options. Now we got to go with what we have. And
Yep,
so I think that bias to action is really critical.
agreed. Get it done. Do something.
Yes, do
Keep
something.
things moving.
That's right. You can learn more tomorrow.
Yeah,
All right. Bias to
nice.
action. That's where we land.
That's right.
Yay. Huzzah.
Boom.